Hello, everybody. Right now, I'd like to talk to you about Venezuela 2.0. Is this really Venezuela 2.0? No, it just feels like it. During the first Trump administration, invading Venezuela was being floated around within the Republican Party and especially by the Trump administration. So let's break this down. First, why? Why is actually a very simple answer. Fossil fuels. But if you wanted to go a little deeper into this, why are specific fossil fuel companies want Venezuela? All right, let's start off by this. The fossil fuel companies that want to go after Venezuela are ExxonMobil and Koch Industries. They're the ones that also wanted us to go to war in Iraq. As you know, that didn't necessarily work out. In some ways it did, and in some ways it didn't. But why are they going after these types of countries? Why do they go after places in the Middle East? Why are they going after Venezuela? And the answer is refineries. So when you actually start mining for crude and start digging for crude, the crude actually brings up things with it. In the case of the Middle East and in Venezuela, the type of crude is very sandy. So you can't stick it in any old refinery. You need to actually stick it into a refinery that accommodates the sand. And those are owned in this country by ExxonMobil and Koch Industries. And since ExxonMobil and Koch Industries are basically backing the Republican Party, no matter how dictatorial they are, it's them who's doing it. So here's the deal. Going after Venezuela, sure, we could defeat the military within a year, because the military isn't really well armed and it's not really well equipped, and they're basically just reduced to an occupying force ever since Hugo Chavez took it over. When Hugo Chavez took it over, he basically took the budget that he was going to use for equipment and started paying off a lot of the high-ranking soldiers so they wouldn't coup him in return. That's kind of how all dictatorships kind of work. So they have a lot of high-ranking officers, and they have a lot of ground soldiers that aren't really well equipped, they're not really well trained, and they're not really good at anything but fighting unarmed people. That's kind of what our forces in the United States is becoming, but that's another video. So here's the deal. Could we beat the Venezuelan government? Sure. Yeah, we could. They're not really good at fighting anything but unarmed people. But the problem with that is there's a lot of non-state actors, or we call militias, terrorists, gangs, smugglers. And it's actually amplified by the government. See, within the military, they don't always have money, and they're kind of a broke autocracy. So what happens is, a lot of times they'll pay their soldiers in military equipment, like guns and bullets. So those military men go right back and they sell those guns and bullets to the non-state actors and the gangs and the terrorists that live in Venezuela. And there is a lot of them. So here's the deal. We'll go after Venezuela, we'll overthrow them, and then we'll be in another insurgency just for God knows how long. That's the reason we don't want to go to war with Venezuela. They also are part of the network that Russia and China are part of. So a lot of their oil kind of goes into the eastern markets. It's not really worth going to war with them, because even when we went to war with Iraq, sure, we completed all our objectives, but it cost way more money than we recouped. So it just wasn't worth it, as this won't be either. And as I kind of mentioned in previous videos, I do maintenance and I work as a civilian contractor for the military. They're basically just drying up the budget. They're not going to be really good for anything pretty soon. They need resources to actually do all the things that they're supposed to do. And unfortunately, in my opinion, they're being turned into an occupational force. Because remember, they're actually just taking a dump on their own people. They're going to different cities and they're harassing patrons, they're harassing citizens to the point where people aren't going to these areas where they're at, and they're bankrupting the local businesses. Unfortunately, that is by design, and they're going along with it. But the problem is this. Preparing to fight unarmed people and civilians, I mean, there's nothing you could do about it. You could put me, and I'm 6'1", about 225, 230, and you could take me against the weakest soldier on the planet. If they have a firearm, I'm going to lose 10 times out of 10. But if you go after somebody that actually knows how to fight, that's different. You actually need the training, you need the expertise, you need the experience. So we'll see how this goes. So right now, the Republican Party, in summary, is trying to go to war with Venezuela. It's an unwinnable war again. We're going to be dealing with an insurgency. We're going to be going after a weak military at a time when the military itself is actually maybe at its weakest point in modern history. So here we go. It's a bad idea. It was a bad idea in the first term. It's a bad idea now. It was a bad idea during the George Bush administration. And it'll always be a bad idea. Because nowadays, the military, and all militaries in the world, don't do victories anymore. They're not really in a position of power to do so. They're only good at Two things: stabilizing areas that they're in, destabilizing areas they're in. And that's it. And if you really want to go take over an area, you can destabilize it until the power structure is gone, and then you can try to stabilize it when a new power structure is in. But since they don't have the resources and they don't have the economy to actually keep enough people employed to maintain a democracy, they're just going to have to put in an authoritarian government that's just working well with us. And honestly, it's never worth it in the long run.